We live in an exhausting era of visibility. The pressure to maintain a flawless personal brand and curate a pristine digital footprint has left us deeply anxious, constantly aware that an invisible audience is watching our every move. This anxiety is built on a specific assumption. If people know they are being watched, they will behave. By that logic, continuous surveillance should engineer a perfect society. Over 2,000 years ago, Plato explored this exact premise in his foundational text, The Republic. He introduced a thought experiment known as the Ring of Gyges. In the story, a shepherd finds a ring that makes him completely invisible. Free from the fear of public judgment, the shepherd sneaks into the palace, seduces the queen, and murders the king. Plato used this to argue that human beings default to their own selfish desires unless they are deterred by the threat of being seen. Plato firmly believed that invisibility breeds monsters. Yet, staring down our own hyper-connected reality, we have discovered that total visibility creates a paranoid nightmare instead. This schematic illustrates an architectural concept called the Panopticon. Designed in the 18th century, it features a ring of backlit cells surrounding a central watchtower. The genius of the design is that the inmates can never see inside the tower. They never actually know if a guard is watching them at any given moment. The philosopher Michel Foucault realized the physical guard is irrelevant. Because the prisoners anticipate being watched, they internalize the guard's gaze. They take over the job and begin policing themselves. Plato saw the danger of this dynamic in his description of the public assembly. He characterized the crowd as a great beast or a monster, a roaring entity discarding truth for whatever the masses happen to approve. The uncertainty of the Panopticon Tower transforms that invisible guard into a representative of this collective. When the identity of the observer is hidden, the prisoner begins to perform for an imagined mob, fearing a relentless, unthinking judgment from anyone who might be looking in. Long before social media existed, the early mass media scaled up the roar of the assembly. The printing press industrialized public judgment, laying the groundwork for modern cancel culture. Look at the case of Karl May, an immensely popular German author in the early 1900s. Late in his life, he became the target of a vicious, coordinated newspaper smear campaign designed to excavate minor crimes from his youth and ruin his reputation. This campaign was orchestrated by a man named Rudolf Lebbeus. Lebbeus understood that a public figure's past was a lucrative weapon. He demanded extortion money from May. When May refused to pay, Lebbeus fed his history into a newspaper he owned, letting the public assembly act as the executioner. May wrote extensively about the psychological toll of this public trial. He described being trapped in a spirit's furnace, battered by the hammer blows of public execution. To survive the onslaught, his identity fractured. He was forced to bury his authentic self behind a rigid, heavily armored persona. May's historical destruction reveals a harsh truth about the crowd. Dragging someone into the glare of the assembly does not forge moral citizens. It simply creates sanitized, defensive avatars. Fast forward to the present, and we have automated the exact mob that destroyed Karl May. Our social media algorithms have perfected the extortion model, scaling it to encompass billions of people. We voluntarily step into the cell. We spend hours curating our aesthetics, filtering opinions, and scouring digital histories, desperate to appease an invisible algorithm that we assume is always watching. We are functioning simultaneously as the terrified prisoners and the ruthless guards of our own digital cells. To understand the mental toll this takes, look back at Plato's Republic and his psychological profile of the ultimate ruler, the tyrant. You might expect a dictator to be happy, but Plato argued the tyrant is actually the most miserable person in the city. He is held captive by his own power, terrified of his subjects, surrounded by enemies, and trapped indoors by his own paranoia. That profile maps onto the modern digital citizen. The larger your audience grows, and the more fiercely you protect your personal brand, the more isolated you become. Ultimately, the pursuit of constant digital validation does not build a kingdom. It places you in solitary confinement. In his allegory of the cave, Plato warned that humans easily mistake flickering shadows on a wall for reality. Today, the entire digital panopticon, the metrics, the personal brands, the fear of cancellation, is just a projection of shadows. This dynamic creates a direct philosophical inversion. If the modern state requires hypervisibility to maintain control, the ring of Gyges changes from a tool of corruption into a tool of preservation. Choosing to disconnect and embrace absolute anonymity functions as a radical rebellion against a system that requires your participation to exert its power. True freedom in the digital age is not achieved by gathering an audience and being seen by everyone. It is found by having the courage to be completely invisible.